So once again, welcome. This is a webinar presented by the Procura Plus CO2 Performance Ladder Interest Group, and it will be really focused on a buyer's perspective, the CO2 Performance Ladder in practice. This interest group is co-chaired by ECLA Europe and by the Foundation for Climate-Friendly Procurement Business called SKAO. My name is Grace, and I am an expert in sustainable and innovation procurement at ECLA Europe. And I will be kind of moderating this session. And I'm thrilled to have with me a couple of really cool guests who will present about the CO2 Performance Ladder as well as a user journey of the tool. So first, for today's agenda, we will start with an introduction to the focus group as well as an introduction to the ladder. We will then have a user journey, so the experience of Transport for London. We have with us Anna Fish, who is an environment manager for the organization. This will be followed with some brief Q&A. Then we'll have a short session on the value of the CO2 Performance Ladder and end it with a little bit of discussion and a close. So a bit about the interest group. As the global community faces escalating climate challenges, the need for effective and innovative mitigation strategies has become increasingly more imperative. By leveraging the power of procurement, public authorities can demonstrate demand for greener goods, services, and works, and incentivize the market to commit to more CO2 reduction. However, contracting authorities often lack reliable and user-friendly tools for identifying and purchasing solutions that meet sustainability objectives. The CO2 Performance Ladder is a green public procurement instrument that serves as both a comprehensive management system for suppliers and acts as an effective policy tool for governments to inspire and recognize climate action. The CO2 Performance Ladder Interest Group is a Procura Plus interest group. These interest groups bring together participants who wish to collaborate on specific sustainable procurement topics of common interest. This particular group seeks to provide a forum for participants to exchange insights and experiences on the current practices, challenges, and ambitions for reducing CO2 emissions in procurement activities. More specifically, by using the CO2 Performance Ladder environmental management tool. The group is co-chaired by SKAO and by ECLA Europe. So the purpose of this interest group is to provide a space for participants to exchange insights and experiences on the current practices, challenges, and ambitions for reducing CO2 emissions in procurement activities, be introduced to other contracting authorities with similar emission reduction objectives, as well as to the CO2 Performance Ladder itself, be inspired to take action, promote, and adopt emission reduction measures and procurement practices, be informed on how the CO2 Performance Ladder can be operationalized to concretely implement sustainable purchase policies through structural emissions reduction, and to receive hands-on instruction and support on how the tool can be implemented in specific procurement activities. I will now hand it over to Elizabeth Mueller, Project Manager at SKAO, who will describe a bit more about the CO2 Performance Ladder.
Thank you, Grace. I was just wondering if there's still be an introduction round or you want me to start straight away?
I believe you can begin right away.
Okay, very good. So my name is Elizabeth Mueller from the CO2 Performance Ladder and the Foundation for Climate-Friendly Procurement and Business, together with Thijs, who is in the call today. We present the team, the international team responsible for the CO2 Performance Ladder Europe project. And I will tell you more about that later on. So for now, I'm going to share, especially for the people who are not yet acquainted with the CO2 Performance Ladder short, what is the ladder? Where do we come from? Who are we? And a little bit about the system, but I try to share this in a nutshell because, of course, we have the user journey afterwards. Grace, can you start with the first slide? Thanks. So here you can see the foundation of the CO2 Performance Ladder as an effective procurement tool. And its overall mission is to drive structural decarbonization through the power of procurement, Grace already mentioned. You can see on this picture how procuring authorities use the ladder in their tender as an award advantage. It means that bidding companies who are committed to become certified on the ladder are rewarded with a financial award advantage. The concept here is the higher the ambition level of the company, the higher the advantage. And I will show this in an example later in the presentation. So I think an important note here, and this is what you can see, third-party verification. That's very important for the certification system, that this is an independent way of auditing. So you can see somewhere, I think in the slide is a stick. No, you don't see a carrot. So there usually we work with a little symbolic carrot at the in this slide, and it shows actually that instead of a stick, companies are awarded to really decarbonize structurally. You can also see that in this picture that companies that certified on the ladder, they reduce their CO2 emission not only on project level, that's the far end of this overview, but on project level, but also on organization and supply chain level. And this means basically that the behavioral change that you can see there is happening on all levels and with many, many stakeholders. And hence the name theory of change, really the philosophy and the foundation of the CO2 Performance Ladder. If you can go to the next slide. Thanks. So who are we? SKAO stands for the Foundation of Climate-Friendly Procurement and Business, like Grace already mentioned, and we are the owner and the administrator of the CO2 Performance Ladder. We are independent and a not-for-profit organization. So an important role of ours is to work together with all the stakeholders who are having a voice in the development of this norm. So it's very much a market instrument. We work with companies, procuring authorities, NGOs and government. And it's an ongoing development and implementation of both the certification scheme and the ladder as procurement instrument. So I think one of the DNA that we are having in our organization is also research. We work together with lots of research institutions and universities to build knowledge. And we also, of course, support many stakeholders in implementation. Next slide. Thank you. So here you can see how far it goes. The CO2 Performance Ladder is really has a whole history behind. So 15 years. It all started with ProRail, the big, huge procuring authority here in the Netherlands, responsible for the train system. And also Rijkswaterstaat. We don't see Rijkswaterstaat in this picture, but also a very important founder actually of the performance ladder. And we came into existence when the market actually requested we need an independent foundation to manage and administer this very effective procurement tool. We do, let me see. So you can see in this picture also the gradual growth of the CO2 performance certifications and a couple of flags of countries. So I'm going to tell more about that, the expansion in Europe. But it's nice to see the numbers here. There are 300 plus public procurement authorities using the CO2 Performance Ladder as a GPP tool. In the Netherlands and Belgium for a long time, it's now implemented as a structural GPP tool, as a standard instrument. And we have over 1,500 certificates representing approximately 5,000 organizations. It's also good to know that it's very accessible for SMEs, hence the number here. More than 75% are small and medium-sized enterprises. It shows that how accessible the instrument is for companies too. A bit about the European project. If you can go to the next slide, Grace. So, and this is where also the close collaboration comes in with ICLAI. So the reason we are here today is because some years ago, the seeds were planted as we received lots of interest in the CO2 Performance Ladder from organizations and procurers in European countries and even beyond. So this led to the start of the CO2 Performance European project. And thanks to the IKEA Foundation who support us in this mission, we started the European expansion 2 years ago. And before we had a pilot with Belgium, and because of the successful pilot in Belgium, it is now being implemented structurally. So it is really to drive the climate transition through the power of procurement, together with great partners like ICLAI. We work together with ISD, the International Institute for Sustainable Development, CO2 Logic, that was and is still our partner in Belgium, and then also the University of Utrecht. And this is amazing because we did lots of nice, interesting studies on monitoring and impact with these institutions, and at the same time, the CO2 Performance Ladder is now piloted in other countries: Ireland, France, UK, Germany, and Portugal. So what we see is we gather a lot of data, how this is being experienced in other countries. We will listen to the user journey today in the UK, but it's amazing to see that we have new data coming in from implementing CO2 Performance Ladder in other countries, in other cultures, in other contexts. So in each country, we collaborate with local coordinating partners, and then we focus on supporting capacity building, and really also monitoring the impact of the CO2 Performance Ladder implementation. Yeah, thanks, Grace. So the system, very short in a nutshell, because I don't want to duplicate the presentation of Anna. As Grace already mentioned, it's on the one hand a green public procurement tool. As a procuring party, you can determine the award advantage per level for each tender. And I will show in an example how this works in practice. The ladder is on the same time a CO2 management tool for companies. They can obtain a certificate for one of the 5 levels that you see here in the picture. And based on the plan, do, check, act cycle, they have access to a very hands-on and practical management system for setting ambitious targets and implementing measures. Can go to the next slide. So here, a very short example. Here in the contract, the ambition level is included as a performance requirement. And as mentioned, as a procuring party, you can determine the award advantage per level for each tender. And in this example, you see a percentage, but it can also be points or credits. So when a company registers for a project, they indicate at what level they want to carry out the project. So that's the level of ambition. And here you can see that different companies registering for different levels, company A, B, and C. And the company C in this example has the best price performance ratio. So the contract is awarded to this company C. And go to the next slide. So basically, what does the certification organization have? So lots of insight in their footprint. That's one. A clear communication and a transparency strategy about their footprint and their targets. So keeping in mind that every stakeholder, employees are coming along. Of course, the ambitious reduction targets, and the fourth is in this context, lots of dialogues and conversation with other stakeholders to innovate and to collaborate in order to really reach their targets. So every year, and this is of course at the heart of the system, when the project has been concluded, the company proves they have met the requirements of their level by accredited third party. So I think I can close with just showing you the documents, the heart of the system. This is the handbook CO2 Performance Ladder. We have a website where you can find all the information. And of course, we will also include links in the presentation so you can find the documents. But it's important to know that this is all covered in the handbook and also in the practical manual for companies. I would like to give the word to Grace now, or to Anna, and I hope it is a little bit clear how things work. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And hopefully everyone found some inspiration in that explanation. I would now like to hand the floor to Anna Fish, the Environment Manager at Transport for London, who will tell us a bit how the CO2 Performance Ladder can be used in practice. So I'll stop sharing.
Thanks very much, Grace. I will just share my screen. Let me know if you can see that. I'll put it in presentation mode.
Perfect.
Oh. Cool. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Anna Fish. I'm an Environment Manager at Transport for London. So I'll walk you through some of the more practical steps and how we have found our journey with the CO2 Performance Ladder so far. We've been in conversations with SKAO about implementing the Performance Ladder for over a year now, but we are now sort of underway with our pilot initiatives and getting to the hands-on bit, which is a really exciting place to be in. So really pleased to be speaking to everybody this afternoon, and hope I can sort of demystify some of the tangible steps that we're taking. Because I won't delve too much into this, because I think just Elizabeth's just done a really good job of of explaining the ins and outs of the ladder. But this is a slide that we've used internally in the business, as well as our sort of elevator pitch as to what the ladder is and what it means. So there's some wording there if anybody wants to borrow that, if they're doing any sort of internal engagement. But yes, TfL is the first organisation in the UK to pilot the CO2 ladder, so we're in a really exciting place to be sort of leading the way for the UK in terms of using the ladder. It's supported by the Department for Business and Trade in the UK, so they're quite interested to see how we get on with using the ladder and how it can be implemented further in other UK public procuring authorities. So yeah, seeing the success across Europe, that was very appealing to us to see that it's got demonstrable success, that we know that it will be successful again in our organisation. So we're currently being supported by Action Sustainability, who are sort of acting as SKAO's UK partners for coordinating and implementing the ladder in the UK. Action Sustainability are also the owners of the Supply Chain Sustainability School, so they have a large platform for education for other supply chain partners to sort of educate themselves on other sustainability topics. So they've got a great platform there as well for supporting the education of the markets that we're working with. So in terms of how the ladder supports our internal priorities for supply chain decarbonisation, TfL launched a corporate environment plan in 2021, where we set out some key supply chain ambitions and what we want to achieve with our suppliers. These three key actions were to measure and monitor the carbon impacts of our supply chain, focusing on the highest priority areas to reduce emissions, to work in partnership with our suppliers to identify and further deliver emission reductions, and to specify sustainable standards and ensure our supply contracts incentivise suppliers to reduce carbon from the products and services we procure. So the CO2 Performance Ladder really helps to deliver on most of these ambitions. It gives us an opportunity to engage with our suppliers on carbon, which is quite important for us, and a great step in the right direction. So TfL have also recently committed to the 5 client carbon commitments in the UK, which are 5 simple actions for large clients in the UK to take to decarbonise. So those 5 are listed here, and one of those is to procure for low carbon construction and provide incentives in our contracts. So again, it's really helping to deliver on that commitment and supporting our drive for incentivisation. It's also sort of contributing to other areas, so where we're applying the ladder on carbon contracts and steel contracts. It's sort of helping to decarbonise that in those areas as well. So it's really quite a collective tool to support all 5 of those ambitions. And then some of the benefits that we're finding with the ladder so far is that it offers a low cost incentivization method for TfL. So as you know, there's other ways of incentivizing the supply chain, such as offering bonuses or increasing the cost that we of goods and services that we're procuring as a reward for decarbonisation, but those would require additional funding and more money in the pocket to give to suppliers as a reward for decarbonisation, which just isn't feasible for a public procurement authority. So the carbon ladder offers us a free way of doing that with the fictitious discount approach. Really importantly, it drives carbon maturity in our supply chains. I think this has been really well explained so far, but this is a really important point that we've hammered home to our business leaders as to why this tool is really important for us. And it supports readiness for future reporting requirements. So we know that in the future there will be requirements for us to report our Scope 3 emissions, and the tool really supports us to for the supply chain to be reporting back to us on their carbon emissions, and that data we can then feed into our sort of corporate reporting level. And finally, it's really easy to implement, so there's no carbon expertise really required for P&C leads. Our procurement commercial leads have all undertaken carbon literacy training as part of our carbon literacy initiative across the business, where we've now got over 5,700 individuals trained. But beyond that, there isn't really any expertise needed for carbon lead procurement and commercial leads to take the lead with implementing carbon reduction in contracts. So our approach to implementing the ladder. So right at the very early stages, we undertook a lot of engagement with SKAO and Action Sustainability to really understand how the tool works. And it was a lot of collaborative work as well between our responsible procurement and corporate environment teams, so coming together to see how we can implement it in our organisation. TfL is a very large organisation. We've got over 600 members in our procurement and commercial teams, so that had to sort of be taken into consideration in our approach to the pilot. We knew that it was going to be sort of hammered home on a small number of procurements, and we would have to be think carefully about how we would select that procurement pool. So being candid as well, I think with our engagement in terms of trying to understand the tool, I think we, in the initial stages, considered it to be more complicated than it really was, and it is really, really simple. So in hindsight, I think we were really trying to find where the complications were and make sure that all of our questions had been answered, and we were asking many questions about how the tool works. But in hindsight, it's really, really simple. So I think anybody that's looking to implement the tool is to not overcomplicate it, and it really is as simple as it appears on the tin. So taking that forward when looking at pilots. So step 2 was identifying projects for the pilot. So I call this attempt 1 because we first approached our capital procurement team. So our procurement teams are split into the capital side, so looking at our construction and infrastructure projects, and then the operational side that looks at the more day-to-day running of the organisation in terms of products and services materials that we're procuring, cleaning contracts, uniform contracts, everyday rail products. It spans a huge number of sectors. But we first approached capital where we'd seen that the ladder had success in small construction projects in the past in other areas. So we engaged a team that was working on a major infrastructure procurement, and this team were already engaged in sustainability initiatives. They were already quite proactive in terms of their sustainability in this project, and we thought that this would be a good team to start working with as people who were already up to speed with sustainability and would be quite receptive to use of the tool. So we worked with this team to run a workshop with support from SKAO for the project team to map out how it would be implemented in the key stages of the procurement. We asked them to map out the timelines of the key activities throughout the procurement and where it would need to be implemented. So while that workshop went well, and we'd sort of mapped out our approach with this procurement, we then sort of took a second look at it, and some of the feedback that we'd had from the team was that the bidders in the contract were already mature in carbon reduction. Many of these were multinational players. They were PAS 2080 certified and already had a a mature carbon management system, and we suspected that the bidders for this contract would all score probably a 5 on the ladder in terms of their maturity, and therefore it wouldn't offer a significant award advantage or a competitive advantage for any of the bidders in this contract. We thought that it would probably be better applied in an area where there's more opportunity for maturity. So we took a step back and we redirected the project into attempt 2. So we instead approached our operational procurement team and looked at the operational side of procurement. And this was with a team with who we already had good relationships with. We were already engaged on carbon. And this was with our track procurement team. So within our track procurement team, they're procuring a range of carbon intensive materials from sort of cast concrete and concrete products, steel rail, points and crossings. There were some really major sort of steel products that are involved in this team, and we thought that this would be a good place to start. So the team lead as well, we had a good relationship with, who's very enthused with carbon, very inspired by the carbon literacy training that they'd undertaken, off the back of which they make pledges to sort of what they're going to do to implement carbon reduction in their day-to-day roles. And so they saw this as a way of meeting the pledges that they'd made in that training too. So we presented the tool at their team meeting, and the track team lead was really supportive in asking all procurement leads to put forward at least one procurement from their pipeline that was pre-SSQ stage. So the support of that team lead, sort of spelling out that all managers were requested to put one forward, that was really supportive of finding those key procurements. And also I think a pool of a different range of people to work with to get that sort of range of feedback from at the end of the pilot will be really useful for feedback and how we can successfully implement it and span it out across TfL. So we now have a pool of 7 key procurements that we're piloting on. This is across 5 procurement managers, including a varied portfolio in terms of contract value, contract duration and sectors. So it really spans a broad range of contract types. So we've now produced a tracker to sort of track the progress of each of these and where they're at in their procurement stages, and what needs to be done at each of those stages. So I've got an extract of that below as to how we're keeping on top of that. And then step 3 is beginning implementation with these procurement managers. So we're working with them individually to embed the ladder into their individual procurements. We're taking into account their individual approaches on how they like to work on their procurements as well. There is a standardized methodology and system that they have to work to, but it's just making sure that we're keeping the procurement leads on board and have a good understanding of how to use the ladder. Also, a huge thanks must go to Action Sustainability, who we've been working really closely with as well. They've almost been an additional member of the team of the SMEs that have been involved in supporting these procurements, and they're working to develop the material for input in the right documents. So what we're sort of working towards is a standardised set of material that we've then got like an off-the-shelf pack that any procurement manager can pick up and implement in the right stages of their procurements. So they're working really closely with us and really supporting us through the process, which has been brilliant so far. They've also been really supportive in terms of any procurement manager that wants to go through anything, that has any questions. The Action Sustainability team have been at the end of the phone as well, which has been great. So the key stages for implementation for us, and that will likely apply to other authorities as well, is the procurement strategy. So it's embedding the ladder right from the beginning and considering it from the start of that procurement. So our procurement strategies go to senior management for sign off in the majority of cases. So that means the senior managers will get an overview of where the ladder is being used as well, and it'll really be considered right from the beginning of that procurement. There's then a market engagement session as well. So we've Action Sustainability have run briefings for suppliers as well, where it gives an opportunity for questions, fills them in on how we'll be using the tool and ensuring that they've got a level of understanding when going for the tender. And then in the standard supplier questionnaire, which asks suppliers their level of understanding for information only. So it's just making sure that it's really embedded throughout every stage. They're probably or it's debatable whether there's a need to implement it at SSQ stage. In my opinion, we're not really asking anything that contributes towards the contract at that point. But what we really want to know from suppliers within this stage is whether the suppliers have got the understanding from the market engagement session, or whether there's further engagement that we need to do with that supplier to make sure that they're fully aware of the process. And then importantly, the invitation to tender stage. So this is the stage that asks suppliers to propose the level that they'll commit. So I guess in countries that are more mature with the ladder, they're asking to put forward the certification that they've already got. We're at a stage now where we're really early in the process. So what we're asking is that suppliers propose the level that they'll commit to within a proposed period of contract commencement. So it gives the suppliers an opportunity to review the criteria, self-assess and get an idea and a feel for how they will be assessed externally as well. And they'll put forward there where they think they'll be able to get within X number of months of the contract commencement. That will then, any responses that come back from the invitation to tender at that stage will then be applied in the commercial weighting, where it will be translated into a fictitious discount and weigh in the commercial weighting as well. And what we find is this sort of covers the carbon aspect of environmental and social value considerations in a contract. So it doesn't tread on the toes of any sort of social value weighting that we've got in there, or any further environmental weighting that we might need for other environmental factors such as general environmental management, adaptation, nature and biodiversity. Those other aspects can still be considered separately to the carbon ladder as well. So it doesn't tread on the toes of other aspects. So sharing some of my thoughts so far, I've sort of been the key coordinator of this. I've done the primary engagement with our procurement teams to sort of get it off the ground. But in terms of first steps for anyone that's looking to implement the pilot in their own organisations, is to utilise existing internal relationships for initial implementation. We found it really beneficial to work with people that we've already got good relationships with to get it off the ground. From that point, we've been able to engage their seniors who have been able to sort of support further implementation of the ladder. So through that good relationship, we've had access to other senior managers that we probably wouldn't have approached directly ourselves in the first instance, but those senior managers have then been supportive of wider rollout. So the team that we've been working with in terms of track procurement is part of a track and fleet procurement team. So we've now been able to mirror this into the fleet procurement team, and now looking at further rollout to take the same approach that we did with the track team, since we've had success there. And with that senior management support, we're hoping for a lot of success there as well. And also when selecting the initial projects to pilot it on, is to prioritise carbon intensive goods and services in sectors where there's opportunity to drive maturity. So I think with our first attempt, we were already looking to implement it on a sector that was already mature in this space, but actually applying it in a sector where maturity could be driven further, it's going to have more of an impact. So that would be advice for looking to implement the ladder as well. In terms of internal engagement, I would say that there's time that's needed to explain the tool to teams and individuals to ensure understanding. So as we're getting into the swing of things with the carbon ladder, there's been more and more demand for further presentations and comms to support wider internal rollout, which is brilliant because it's showing that it's getting the traction internally that we want it to, and that there's a demand for further success, and it fills a gap that we're now being able to fill with the use of the tool. But just to have and start to develop slide decks that are ready to go for internal engagement pieces. And in those presentations, to link the benefits back to internal priorities, so trying to pick out how the ladder supports internal strategies. So sort of the slide that I presented at the beginning about how it supports TfL's strategy, that's been key in demonstrating to leadership how it's helping us deliver on these priorities. Linking it back to financial benefits, to supply chain benefits, how it can support our suppliers. It supports us as TfL to be a strong leading supplier in this space as well. So, our supply chain are looking to us for direction in terms of carbon management, and this tool gives us a form to do that with. And in terms of frequently asked questions that we've had from the procurement managers that we've been working with, many of them came to us asking about the KPIs. There was a bit of confusion about, well, what KPIs do we need to put in the contract? This sounds like it requires a lot of things that we have to manage as contract managers, but really trying to share the message that it's really, really simple, that we're only going to require 1 or 2 KPIs for us to manage. That external certification point really fulfills that for us and means that we don't have to do sort of the hands-on carbon policing in our supply chain to make sure that they're performing. That's all measured externally. So trying to communicate that with contract managers in terms of the only KPIs that really need to be measured is that our suppliers are meeting the committed carbon ladder level that they've proposed at ITT, and then also maintaining that throughout the duration of the contract. And that's all they really need to manage. And hammering home that minimal technical knowledge is needed for procurement leads to implement. I think sometimes, carbon commercial leads are sort of managing and juggling many different priorities across many different sort of themes that across an organisation, from health and safety and quality, technical and environment. And sometimes carbon is quite a scary topic for people to approach, but reassuring them that there's not a lot of technical knowledge that's really needed for this. I know it's for us as carbon professionals who are sort of expert in this area, it's we're the ones who need like the background knowledge and know the ins and outs of how the carbon management tool works. But for our procurement leads, communicating the basics and just making it really, really simple to them, so it doesn't seem like this overwhelming tool that needs to take up a lot of their time. It's really, really straightforward. So making sure that comes across in any communication with procurement leads. And off the back of that, keeping a bank of clarifying questions. With the amount of engagement I've had internally so far, there's a lot of the same questions that sort of come up. So keeping a bank of those and what the responses are, sort of matured our slide decks and presentations and information that we're sharing with our internal teams to keep addressing those clarifying questions that keep repeatedly coming up, so that we've got answers to those questions before they're asked, and it makes it really simple for others to understand. But so far, I think our experience with the ladder has been really positive. I think with as any pilot, there's a few lumps in the road that you sort of have to work through, but nothing that's been sort of detrimental to the implementation for us. And we're really hopeful that we've got some success on the horizon with this. We're not quite through the first ITT stage yet for the first procurement that we're working on, but we're expecting that tender to be published by the end of the year. So we should start to get responses back in January. And it's at that point that we can start to really embed the responses that come back from that ITT into the commercial weighting, and really start to see some results that we can feed back on both internally and externally, which would be fantastic. So yeah, I'm delighted that we're using the tool. It's been a really positive experience for us so far, and I would strongly encourage any other authorities looking to implement the tool to really take it with both hands and go for it. I think we spent quite a lot of time questioning and trying to understand at the beginning, but in hindsight, I think we really could have just dived straight in. So I would strongly encourage that as well. Does anybody have any questions? I'll stop sharing my screen so that I can see any hands up.
We might have time for just one question, and then we can move on to the next presentation, and just so that we have enough time to get through it and have a wider discussion. But if anyone has any questions, please feel free to raise their hands or write them in the chat. So
if I can ask one, I'm curious about how many possible tenders are you thinking at this moment, Anna? I'm Thijs, also from the CO2 Performance Ladder. Good to know for you. just curious.
Yeah, good to meet you. We have a really extensive pipeline. There's a huge opportunity for this to be implemented on a huge number of tenders that I couldn't put a number on, but we're looking at over the course of the year, TfL has hundreds of tenders that go out. So in terms of potential, there's quite a significant potential for us. At the moment, I think it's manageable working with one procurement manager at a time, to sort of grasp that understanding. And I think once we've got a pool of contract managers who are able to sort of vouch for it, that we've managed to make it easy for, the word gets out, and it's and it's seen as a more easy tool to implement. So I think once everybody's done it once, they'll be more open to implementing it on the wider pipeline. So I'm hopeful that we've got a lot of opportunity there.
Nice. I would like the way you're working on it step by step.
Thank
Well
you.
done.
And I think just one last follow-up question, which would be, you mentioned some of the sectors that should be more carbon intensive of being easier to apply it. Would you have maybe general examples of some of the sectors or some of the types of procurements that you think are most relevant?
I think for us it's definitely steel and concrete. So that obviously applies to both sides of our supply chain as well in terms of capital and operations. So we've got a huge potential there, which also contributes to our CLC commitments that I mentioned at the beginning. So yeah, steel and concrete are the big ones that we really want to drive down. So I'm hoping we can see some positive success there as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And if anyone else has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and we can come to them in the last bit of this session, which will be a discussion / Q&A. So for this next part, I will share my screen again. And thank you so much, Anna, for just this bit about the value of the CO2 Performance Ladder. So the Procure Plus manual, which some of you may be familiar with, offers a central point of reference for public authorities wishing to understand and implement sustainable procurement, and notes several ways that sustainable procurement can bring value to an organization. Many of these ways have already been addressed or are currently being worked on by the CO2 Performance Ladder. And so here is just a summary of a few of the important SPP benefits that the Performance Ladder can help to address. The first being the meeting of policy objectives and sustainable policy goals. This can include on climate, energy, efficiency, air quality, etc. And actually, the CO2 Performance Ladder, in the context of the European project that Elizabeth was speaking about earlier, has identified several upcoming and existing policy spaces where the tool can support through a policy mapping exercise in both the EU and very specific national level contexts. The next factor is the reduction of risk. So this would be reducing risk of non-compliance with environmental and social legislation. This can apply to both the buyers directly or to the suppliers. So the CO2 Performance Ladder has developed guidance on its legal aspects and compliance with existing legislation. This is also good as it will address upcoming legislation as well, such as the due diligence directives regarding supply chains, as well as the corporate responsibility reportings. The next would be financial efficiency. So related to this point, sustainable procurement can increase financial efficiency by reducing costs like those linked to litigation or contract termination. And in the long run, the savings of the various energy, water, or waste over a lifetime or a product or service can provide significant financial savings for an organization. Here, the CO2 Performance Ladder meet criteria can help make a product or service more economically advantageous over its life cycle by incorporating really the true environmental and social cost of the procurement. The next value is the enhancing organizational reputation by demonstrating environmental, social, and economic advantages of sustainable procurement and leading the way in environmental policy. For example, the CO2 Performance Ladder has already been featured in a number of case studies, webinars, and other channels that really promote good practices in cities. And among those who have used it, for example, there were several interviews featured with the Sustainable Procurement Platform and the Green Public Procurement Help Desk, which we can also link for you if you're interested in reading more. Finally, and this is last but not least, it will encourage innovation and the development of competitive sustainable solutions. So the award advantage mentioned by both Elizabeth and Anna encourages companies to really seriously and structurally reduce emissions and hopefully transform the market to be more sustainable and more environmentally responsible. So now I hand it to Elizabeth who will mention some additional benefits.
Thank you so much, Grace. I wanted to thank Anna for her very, very good explanation and a pragmatic approach of the user journey in TFL. And I think a lot of things are aligned basically in what I'm going to tell you, and is coming back from research and feedback from the market. So really about the why of the tool. I think Anna also referred to why was there interest. For procurement authorities, let me start over there. We go back in time. I already showed you the slide, where you go back in time 15 years ago with ProRail and Rijkswaterstaat. It's a very proven methodology, tested over and over again in various sectors in different ways. So it is not only a proven methodology, but it seems to be very user-friendly with low transaction cost. And I think this is also what we get back from Anna. So I'm very happy to hear also how TFL is experiencing the same benefits. Hence the fact that it's a standard GPP tool, I think, in the Netherlands and Belgium right now. So the third-party certification lowers the burden of proof from the procurement authority side to verify claims. I think that's also a very important note. Grace already mentioned the legislation part. When we look at the EU Procurement Directive, we always get many questions from different parts of the world, and especially, of course, in Europe. Is it compliant? Yes, it is. It is aligned with the EU Procurement Directive. It's very much based on the same philosophy of non-discrimination and the key principles in this EU directive. I think if you press the button, we also see the benefits for the companies. So because of the financial award advantage, there is money to invest in the green business case, in the energy transition internally. And I think this is makes it so attractive. And this is also what we see from studies, from research, that in the end of the day, companies reinvest the money back into formulating targets, ambitious targets, and taking the measurements that they need to take for the certification. So very effective as a structural carbon reduction, not like an ad hoc thingy, but really a sustainable way of working towards an ambition level, and then even further, and then even further. So it reinforces absolutely the market position as a sustainable supplier, and in many ways looking for ways to improve your products and services in a sustainable way. So already mentioned multi-use. Yes, the sector, the building and infra sector, it all started over there, because there you can see the big impact you can get. It was a very good question of Grace, but we in the Netherlands and also in Belgium, and now we can see it even in France, where many sectors are now being piloted. In many sectors, that CO2 performance being piloted. So that's very interesting. Whether it's services, IT, all kinds of different industries where the CO2 Performance Ladder is used. And the multi-use is really one certificate can be used for all projects and for all contracting authorities using the ladder in their procurement. So it makes it very, very attractive. Once you have the certificate, you have a very good, strong position. Next slide. So the impact, I think, is interesting to realize that we have been acknowledged by the World Economic Forum and the IPCC and the OECD that the CO2 Performance Ladder is a GPP best practice. So we were very happy. This is years ago that we got this acknowledgement. And then already said, we work together with many research institutions like CE Delft on really monitoring the impact. And there are some results like the carbon. If you work with CO2 Performance Ladder, you certify, you reduce your carbon twice as fast. And these kind of studies, very independent studies that SKAO asks to do, is for us a way to get more insight in the impact. And more studies are being done also with our European partners in the European project ISD. They recently did a wonderful research, and the University of Utrecht more in a more scientific way. How can you monitor? How can you monitor GPP? How can you monitor tools like the CO2 Performance Ladder? There is a webinar that has been recorded, so we can share a link. I'm looking at Grace. We can share a link to these studies, so you can read a little bit what are the different approaches for yourself to monitor the impact and to see what is happening when you see all the different project cases. Next slide, and this is really about examples. Because yes, we have many case studies, and I think TfL in a brilliant way showed step by step not only how do you begin and a multi-stakeholder approach and the key to really build trust, but also how does it work when you are a procurement authority and you have to decide on which standard, the selection, the technical aspects, the consultations with suppliers. Here I chose two very nice cases. The Spanish construction company winning a 900 million tender in the Netherlands. And it's nice because now you can see that even here, it goes beyond the borders of the Dutchies. And this is a very nice case to read from the certification point of view. And then Amsterdam, the municipality of Amsterdam, using the CO2 Performance Ladder to make the city more sustainable. And this is also a nice hook to the fact that many local authorities and governments and ministries and municipalities in the Netherlands are also certified. So using it there, tender is one thing, but they also wanted to practice what they preach, really leading by example. So in the Netherlands, you can see many ministries. Basically, I think every ministry is certified by themselves. So this is also the case with Amsterdam. We will share links, of course, to testimonials and the many project cases, because in the end of the day, this is the most helpful if you see peers working in projects and have dialogues with those who are experienced. So thank you so much.